everybody. Thank you for having me today. I'm here to talk to you a little bit about LoRaWAN and the Thing Stack and how that's been deployed at scale across a number of cities that we've been involved with, and some of the reasons for that and some of the journey that we've taken to get to that particular point. Excuse me. Just trying to get this to work through. There we go. So we have had a sort of turbulent but successful love affair with LoRaWAN for the past 5 or 6 years. I'm sure many of us have. And it started probably in about 2014. So we've been deploying smart lighting controls across large networks for a number of years before that, since about 2008. And we were searching for a new protocol. And LoRaWAN is certainly the one that we've settled on for a lot of our installations. It's not the only one, of course. There are other protocols out there that we've flirted with over the years. But LoRaWAN is the one we sort of settled on. And it began in about 2014 with a request from a client. So this picture you see behind you is a place called St Ives in Cornwall in the southwest UK. It's a tourist destination and a holiday hotspot. And that particular place, we had deployed a large wireless 868-based network to control about 53,000 streetlights across a large UK county called Cornwall. And the client came to us and asked us if we could start monitoring water pumps on the same wireless network. Our technology at the time was proprietary, and it was end-to-end, and we had developed it and we owned it, and it was singular use. It was for street lighting only. So that opportunity came to add things to that network, and we looked at it as engineers. We decided to chase to see if we could make that particular application work. But what we found pretty quickly was that was going to be an expensive development for us to do. It was going to be expensive for the client, and it wasn't particularly going to be a fast development either. And for those reasons, we took a step back and we asked ourselves a different question. And the real question we should have asked ourselves is, was the network that we had deployed the right network? And some of those elements about the network were correct. 868 is a great technology for stuff. But the proprietary nature and the singular use wasn't fit for smart city purpose. So at that point, we decided we needed to look around. And that's when we started to look at things like Sig Fox and weightless and a number of other wireless mesh technologies as well. But it was LoRaWAN that we settled on. And there were a number of reasons for that we'll talk about in a second. But that's how it started. And we knew that if we had an open protocol network like LoRaWAN, we'd be able to hang other verticals off those large-scale deployments that we'd already made. And that was great for the user, for the client whose interest is at our heart. We wanted to make sure they got the best value. And interestingly enough, that Cornwall network is now being altered to LoRaWAN so that they can do that very thing. It's taken a long time to get there, but now they've recognized the potential. So our history is all about lighting control for exterior and road lighting. And of course, there's huge amounts of energy consumed in lighting roads across the world. Our focus is global, of course. And if you can think about a local authority's energy consumption, a large percentage of what they consume as an authority is based around the highways lighting. So our systems allow control of that lighting, light where they need it, dimming, shortening the night, and allowing large, thousands of tons of CO2 reduction and millions of pounds, literally, or euros of saving for all these networks. And that's the drive, really. It's about energy reduction, cost reduction for that energy, and of course, managing a large-scale network with appropriate software. And the street light is perfect for that because smart cities need multiple points, they need power, and street lighting networks that are fully energized allow different devices to sit on altitude. And of course, getting LoRa signal to a street light that's 8 meters tall is much easier than getting to, as we all know, small devices that may be inside or in the ground even. So the lighting network is perfect for LoRaWAN, and it's perfect for smart cities and for use in other applications. And the other thing about it is we've got power. We've got 230-volt power for most of the time, in Europe anyway, on street lighting devices, so we can power a number of devices on the same street light. The control element also allows us to take part in ecological exercises like dark sky events, carbon reduction events, so we can do hourly switch off, we can do wildlife monitoring, we can allow wildlife corridors to be formed, often with a lack of light. So often light is a barrier for animals, crossing roads, for example. If you turn the lights off, that allows for, at night time, allows for the transmission of different species across larger networks. So we're reducing barriers to wildlife and also, helping with these sort of dark sky projects. One thing that came out of COVID was that there was a desire for people to remote monitor, and I'm sure we've all seen this in this particular industry, is that unnecessary trips to site, unnecessary one-to-one communication, unfortunately became something that was a requirement for a lot of cities. And the use of LoRaWAN, for us, started to accelerate about the same time that COVID came along. It didn't help with supply chain and some of the practical natures of what our business does, of course, but there was a change in mindset we felt with cities and the desire to start remote monitoring across their networks, and that was due to this element of wide travel when you don't need to, and it's something that we all see in our daily lives now with remote working, etc. And I think that's born out of what happened with COVID. So why did we settle on LoRaWAN in our long relationship? Well, it's an open protocol, so that means in these networks that we deploy or are deployed with us, we find that we can put multiple solutions onto the same network. Often the scale of the lighting application that goes in for a city will pay for the LoRaWAN network to be deployed. And then, of course, you've got a singular use LoRaWAN that's got the potential for a whole host of other things. And what we're seeing is lighting is often the on-ramp for LoRaWAN and smart city deployment, and then following that successful deployment of the LoRaWAN and the lighting scheme, of the smart lighting scheme, then that LoRaWAN can be used for other things. And that's a trend that we see time after time now. And it's also altering in its other verticals are now coming along before the lighting as well. So the aspect of large-scale LoRaWAN deployment is certainly broadening for us as well. Flexibility, of course. We all know that you've seen the number of applications we have, some really good developments going on here this week. And that is born out of the flexibility we feel about LoRaWAN. And of course, the thing stack and the use of the thing stack and how easy that is now to use across the network. And then really, what we're driving at for our customers, they need a certain number of functionality benefits from the use of a wireless network. They don't really care what the technology is for the end user, but they do care about the functionality and the service that we can deliver using it. And LoRaWAN for us delivers all of those things. And most importantly for us, multicast. So multicast, obviously the ability to send a single message to multiple devices at the same time. And for networks where we have 10, 20, 30, 50,000 devices on the same network talking through multiple gateways, we need to send small packets of data to each of those nodes simultaneously. And multicast is an absolute prerequisite for us. And we can safely say that there are a number of providers now giving good multicast technology, and the things industry being right at the front of that list. And that's a really important functionality for us. It hasn't all been plain sailing, of course. With the development of any technology, I'm sure we have plenty of developers in the room, and the pain of developing a new product, new hardware, new firmware, new software, new functionality, and getting all that to meet into a client's requirements is a very difficult task. COVID got in the way for us a lot, even though it changed the ethos towards remote monitoring in one way. It also made it very difficult for us to source large amounts of semiconductors, for example, capacitors, and a number of our electronic components that we use day to day in our manufacturing became very scarce. I think we're seeing that wave of post-COVID demand now flattening out a little bit, and we're seeing that the supply chains are getting a little bit back to normal, and that's a real relief for us, but it's still not as it was. We used to have a position 5 or 6 years ago where there was a whole host of components, alternatives that we could use at any particular point, but nowadays it's much more difficult to do that. But fingers crossed, touch wood, we're now in a position where those problems seem to be easing. And the interesting thing about LoRaWAN, the way I like working in this ecosystem, is the collaborative element of it. And what we're seeing now is that the other verticals, and we look at everything through a lighting lens, of course, but the other verticals that we're seeing now deployed on some of the networks that we're involved with are really starting to come to the fore. I think we heard yesterday from Connect, excellent company from the UK, Connexin, that we're doing water metering across a large scale. And that's a really interesting scheme because it's the first one we've encountered that's a non-lighting based LoRaWAN at scale that they're using for another vertical. Some of the things that we get involved with is around the highways electrical sector, we would call it. So traffic calming signs, for outside schools. So use of LoRaWAN devices for lamp actuation and switching. Of course, outdoor air quality monitoring for pedestrians, that's an important one. Although, in terms of business case, that seems to be a little less concrete than some of the other verticals. The monitoring of EV charging and energy use for energy pillars for EVs is an interesting one. And then in Northern Europe, salting and gritting and road surface temperature is a huge piece of cost for local authorities. And the unnecessary use of salt, when it's not needed, is a huge. It can be a huge waste of money for local authorities. So that is one of the most important ones that we're looking at and involved with at the moment. And then we see LoRaWAN gateways and devices going up in other cities that we're involved with. This one is in Bristol, where people counting this was born again from COVID. Understanding movement across a network was really important to them. And then back round to Cornwall again. Some of the devices that we're seeing now onto the smart lighting LoRaWAN they're expanding with weather sensors and air quality, for example, and that's all now become part of a larger movement called Smart Kernow. Kernow being the Cornish word for Cornwall, and so they're starting to monitor agri-tech and tourism as well as obviously the smart lighting case. And there are a number of different verticals that are coming in. Interesting, in some of the middle of the UK as well, we've got a huge band of LoRaWAN going into the middle, again, with one of our partners, Connexin, who are putting in a large-scale LoRaWAN there. And that might well turn into, we might be the second-tier supplier for that particular network to do lighting, when the main focus there, of course, is water metering. So that's a really interesting move, and one that we welcome, because we're seeing the use of LoRaWAN at scale, and the benefits to the local authority are obviously much needed. And finally, really, the biggest move we've seen, and I think probably this event has really personified that, is the movement to scale for LoRaWAN. I think 3 years ago, whenever it was January 2020, when we came to this event, it felt very much like the beginning of something. It certainly did to me. We had a lot of excitement about what might happen with this technology. And over the last 3 years, I've really felt that the technology has developed and solidified into an enterprise-level, robust technology that we can deploy and can be trusted. And I think that message is out there in the market now. And I think cities are seeing LoRaWAN as a go-to technology for large-scale deployment. And that's a change in mindset that we didn't see 3 years ago. And that's a really welcome change. And I feel this event has really solidified that thought for me. I was expecting it, but to see everyone here and what everyone's doing has been really, really interesting. So right now, we've got about 500,000 devices out there talking through various protocols, but most of our new work, of course, is LoRaWAN. And we've been doing this for over a decade. And I hope the LoRaWAN story continues for us and continues for everyone else in the room with the same success that we've enjoyed. And I would just like to thank you very much for listening to me today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really, really loved the use cases, and thought it was music to my ears, even though you didn't bring your band this time.
Thanks, Phil.
Another round of applause for Richard. Thank you so much. Now, up next, we are going to talk about why IoT projects fail and what you can do about that. And we'll see you back in a couple minutes with that talk. Bye-bye.